It is the Vince Coglianese Show on WMAL. It's Mike Opelka. That's me. That's my name. Sitting in for Vince today. Glad to be here. Another historic day. And so much happening. I was just watching, during the break, the president doing some speechifying on Bidenomics, which we all know is, wow. What is Bidenomics doing to you today? The majority of Americans, I was looking over some of the numbers out of Heritage Foundation, and the majority of Americans, each American household, worth 17% less than it was 3 years ago. Wonder what had a major effect on that number. It's Bidenomics, everybody. And Joe was speechifying, as I said today, about it, and again had problems and embarrassed himself and ourselves. And we will get into that. But we also have news of the release. Hamas has released two Israelis. Two Israelis have been released by Hamas. So this gives us 4 hostages released in 3 days. If they keep up this pace, and Joe Biden convinces Israel not to flex its military muscles and go in and flatten Hamas as long as there are hostages, then this will run all the way out till the election, won't it? Or just about. Now, that's not what's going to happen. I know that. But it kind of feels that way, doesn't it? It kind of feels like that's what's going on here. That Hamas is trading the hostages for another day above ground. Well, many of them are underground anyway, in the tunnels. But I'm very disturbed by the fact that Israel is being squeezed. Now, Israel needs America's support. Israel needs the Iron Dome supplies to protect themselves from the incoming rockets, not just from Hamas, but from Hezbollah and probably from the Houthis. And God knows who else. Iran has probably got a bunch of rockets ready to go. So Israel needs us. And Joe Biden is basically telling Israel to pump the brakes. Or is he? When Joe was speechifying today, he didn't take any questions. As he turned away from the podium and walked away, there were some reporters shouting questions like, is the U.S. supporting the hostages for ceasefire deal? Because that's what the left wants you to do. Hostages for a ceasefire deal. Here's what happened.
Is the U.S. supporting the hostages for a ceasefire deal?
Why did you?
We should have a ceasefire. Not a ceasefire, we should have those hostages released.
So if you couldn't hear that, Joe initially stopped and said, we should have a ceasefire. And then he went, no, not a ceasefire. We should have the hostages released, and then we can talk. Now, why hasn't that been the address? That should have been the entire statement. Well, maybe a couple other very strong statements from the president last week, Thursday night, when he had that 8 p.m. East Coast address. It should have said, look, Hamas and your buddies in Iran and Hezbollah, release every hostage, and then we'll talk about a ceasefire. Every single one. But, you know, Hamas is saying we're using them as human shields. And we don't have proof of life on all those people either. But that just happened, just not that long ago. But no questions taken, unless he was almost out. He was like 2 steps away from going behind the flag and then walking off the stage where the Bidenomics speech was happening. Joe did have a little problem with the teleprompter. Well, that's nothing new. Why did they let this guy have a teleprompter? And it's usually names or numbers that he has problems with, for example.
And I want to thank Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Todd Young and Representative Representatives Joe Morelli and Susan Wild for their work to make this happen.
Joey, Ward, Wild, who knows? Who knows what's going on there? Yeah, he gets confused all the time. And maybe he should take some time off. Like, go to the beach. Oh, wait, he just got back from the beach. Yeah, that just happened. But the weird part was when Joe came out, he wasn't supposed to go out and go right to the podium. Someone else was supposed to introduce him. But apparently he forgot those instructions. He's got the brain of the memory of a goldfish at this point. It's like 3 seconds. He just goes right out. Here's what happened. He's walking out.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm not introducing me. Mark is. I forgot Mark. I went straight to the podium. I apologize.
No problem.
So Joe walks out, walks right up to the podium. Right behind him is a gentleman, and the guy is kind of slowing his walk as Biden walks right up to the microphone. And he starts turning his head left and right like, hey, what the hell? And Biden starts the introduction by saying, I'm not introducing me. Mark is. Sorry, Mark, I forgot.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm not introducing me. Mark is. I forgot Mark. I went straight to the podium. I apologize.
No problem. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Here's Joe, who was just here. The rest of the world looks at us and just shakes their head and says, okay, now's the time to go in, do whatever you want, because oatmeal brain is there, and he's not capable. He's just not capable. It is one of the more irritating, frustrating things in this entire world that our leader can be so weak. But it's not just him. It's not just him. It's the substructure now. Remember how we used to talk about COVID, and the left was always saying, well, you can't go to games, you can't go to concerts, you can't go to school. Those will become super spreader events. Your Thanksgiving dinner will be a super spreader event. I think that Joe Biden is a stupid spreader. If that's harsh, I'm not sorry. His press secretary. Then you got Kirby. Then you've got Kamala, who's kind of disappeared since the Israel thing, right? She's kind of disappeared since the terror attack on Israel. I realize she's on this HBCU tour where she's out promoting Venn diagrams and claiming that anyone who supports the Constitution and limited government is taking away your rights. Yeah, but she's kind of missing in action too, although she was standing behind him the other day, but not saying anything. Why? Because she's an empty vessel. She has nothing to say. But I think Joe Biden might be a stupid spreader. I think he might be spreading incompetence, or at least they're hiring in their own image. While we're in the district, today it was made known to me that the National Park Service and the D.C. Public Works Department are authorized to use gas-run leaf blowers inside the district. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important because residents are not permitted. Residents are not permitted to use the... I know it's crazy. Yes, it's fall, and the leaves are dropping off the trees every single day. And I have a little battery-powered leaf blower that I use on my property to try and at least clear a path, but I'll do it, and then tomorrow it's covered again. But the National Park Service and the D.C. Department of Public Works are authorized to use the gas-run leaf blowers, but if you live in the district, you cannot. What does this remind you of? COVID? It kind of feels like COVID, doesn't it? It feels like everything that we learned during COVID, that government can tell you to do one thing while they do another, that's still in effect. So when you go to vote, just keep this in mind. This is like the French Laundry and Gavin Newsom going and having a fancy dinner while everybody else had to stay at home. This is Nancy Pelosi going getting her hair done while everybody else had to stay home and do their own hair. You can't have a leaf blower, but the government can have a leaf blower. It is double standards. It is very scary. There's another story that's out there that just popped, and I think this is going to be a big stinking deal. I would fly to work if I had to. I would get on a plane and fly anywhere at any time. That's how much I think the the gift of flight and how important it is, how vital it is, I would go anywhere. I'm not afraid to fly. My wife is the worst flyer ever. And we have to basically put her on a Valium drip to get her on a plane. That's exaggeration, but it's not too far from the truth. This story is happening. It happened with Flight 2059 from Alaska Airlines out of Everett, Washington, headed to San Francisco, was diverted to Portland. And one of the people on the plane has been booked and charged with 83 counts of attempted murder. Now you're thinking, wait, what? And off-duty, meaning he was a passenger, probably had one of those passes where you get to jump on an empty seat on the flight. An off-duty Alaska Airlines pilot charged with over 80 counts of attempted murder, reported by NBC News, after he allegedly attempted to shut off the plane's engines mid-flight on Sunday, causing a diversion to Portland. Now, this would be absolutely the worst nightmare for me. My wife would never get on a plane again in the future. The plane took off from Everett, Washington, headed to San Francisco. And yes, this guy was sitting in one of the flight deck jump seats. So this guy's in the cockpit. And he leaps up and tries to shut off the engines. The Horizon captain, this is a Horizon Air, it's a subsidiary of Alaska Airlines. Horizon Air, one of the Horizon captain and first officer jumped up and took the guy down. And they followed what apparently are FAA procedures and guidelines and then landed the plane in Portland. Thank God these two pilots were paying attention. The pilot and the co-pilot took this guy down. 83 counts of attempted murder. Can we maybe get some details on this guy? Can we find out if this guy had a history of anything else in his background? The gentleman arrested, 44-year-old Joseph David Emerson, charged with 83 counts of attempted murder. Man, it's crazy out there. I do have good news. I will give you a little bit of good news because we could use a little good news today. And the surprising thing here is that there are people working on the show today helping support me who actually said, wait, who? Who are you talking about here? Mary Lou Retton has been released from the hospital. Mary Lou Retton, American hero. Yes, she was on the cover of Wheaties Box years ago. Olympic gymnast, an icon, gold medal winner. Was in the hospital for the past couple of weeks in intensive care fighting pneumonia. Pneumonia. To the point where they thought it was life-threatening. But here's the weirdest part of it. The weirdest part of this story was Mary Lou Retton didn't have health care. Mary Lou Retton, again, American icon. Gold medal winner in the Olympics. Gymnast. And just had a $1 million smile. Apparently didn't have health care. Stricken by this rare form of pneumonia. Now, America jumped up and jumped into one of these crowdfunding pools, and the family said, we're probably going to need $50,000 because she's in intensive care. And the last time I checked, it was about $450,000. So good job, America. Very good job. But according to Mary Lou Retton's daughter, McKenna, Mom is home and in recovery mode. And I hope she gets a lot of media attention because she has been a hero to many. A five-time Olympic medalist. Home from the hospital. Get healthy, Mary Lou Retton. Get very healthy. All right, just around the corner, author Gerald Posner with a very wild story about a drug that may have been driving all of the horrible animalistic behavior by the terrorist who attacked Israel on the 7th of October. We'll get into what's known as the Jihad Pill just around the corner. Your calls as well, 888-630-9625. It is 26 minutes after the hour. Mike Opelka in for Vince Coglianese on the Vince Coglianese Show here on WMAL. And I promise you I will get an update on the Speaker of the House battle because that's raging on. But I also wanted to make mention of the fact that Saturday Night Live, which I know a lot of us gave up on a long time ago because it's not funny anymore and it's one-sided, and they use it like the rest of the network late night shows just to bash conservatives. Saturday Night Live actually bashed Joe Biden. I know, right? Strange stuff. They did it in the Weekend Update news segment, and they made one Biden joke, and then there were no other Biden jokes for the rest of the show. There was no Biden joke at the beginning. There were no Biden jokes throughout the show. There certainly is enough ammunition, but no, they chose to go after Jim Jordan and to go after Donald Trump, which they always do. But here was the joke, and they didn't cut the individual clip out and post it on Twitter X, which is what they usually do. If you look at Twitter X and you look at Saturday Night Live, they take like 4 different segments out of the Weekend Update. But the one that included the Joe Biden joke was missing.
Welcome to Weekend Update. I'm Michael Che.
I'm Colin Jost.
Yeah.
Well, this was a terrible week for the world, but a great week for random idiots who like to share completely unhinged thoughts wherever they can. And weirdly, it's not even on social media anymore. I saw a 1,000-word essay called How I'd Fix Palestine, and it was posted in a Yelp review of a Buffalo Wild Wings. Even world leaders who could be making it better are making it worse. For example, former President Trump went out of his way to praise the terrorist group Hezbollah, calling them, quote, very smart. Though, in Trump's defense, he thinks Hezbollah is the genie from Aladdin.
Now, I sit corrected. This is last week's Weekend Update, where they opened up tearing apart Donald Trump. They didn't tear apart Joe Biden. I thought this was this week's. So I sit corrected. I'm going to have to make good on this. I swear to you, SNL actually mocked Joe Biden, but only for one joke, and one joke only. And I will share it with you. Plus, just around the corner, author Gerald Posner is going to join us. He has a new piece out showing a crazy link between what's known as the Jihad Pill and the beastly behavior of the terrorists who attacked Israel 17 days ago. It's Mike Opelka in for Vince Coglianese on the Vince Coglianese Show. It is the Vince Coglianese Show. It's a Monday. Mike Opelka in for Vince. Thanks for being here. If you need to know more, I'm on Twitter X, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and you can go to pureopelka.com and see the stories that catch my attention. Every day I post them, every stinking day of the week, not the weekends because I'm golfing. And if you want to join the conversation, you're welcome to as well. 888-630-9625 is the number. As we wrapped up the last half hour, I mistakenly played the wrong clip. I was saying that Saturday Night Live never makes fun of Joe Biden, but this week they did. But they only did it once. And it was in the Weekend Update segment, and it was the first joke of the segment. And here's what happened. And it actually was a pretty good joke about Joe Biden.
In what many people are calling a high point of his term, President Biden gave multiple speeches this week in which he issued the same strong warning to anyone thinking about attacking Israel. And here was his message.
Don't.
I won't. I really like that Biden only needs one word to get his point across. He's basically the Groot of presidents.
There you go. They told one joke about Joe Biden. Now, here's the rub on this, because SNL will take their segments and they will cut them down and they'll put them on social media so that if you miss the show, because, frankly, who's really watching Saturday Night Live anymore? If you miss the show, you can watch the clips online. That opening of the Weekend Update, the fake news, was not included in all of the clips. They included the other jokes of the news, but curiously, that one is nowhere to be found. Do you think that maybe they got a call from the White House saying, did you guys make fun of Joe? Please don't put that online, or don't put that online. I'm just saying, the Trump helping Jim Jordan clip that opened the show, that's on there. Lauren Boebert and George Santos being mocked for helping Jordan, that's on there. You can't find the Joe Biden clip anywhere. Coincidence? No, there aren't any coincidences. I see our guest is joining us here. He's on the phone. Gerald Posner is a terrific author. He's written many great books, including my favorite book about the Kennedy assassination called Case Closed. And he's written about the Dr. King assassination, as well as about September 11th with a book called Why America Slept. And then most recently about the pharmaceutical industry, a huge book that came out during the pandemic called Pharma. And Gerald writes a Substack post called Just the Facts. And 2 days ago, he came out with a post about a story that relates to a drug that was found on the bodies of some of the terrorists who attacked Israel. A drug that's known as the Jihad Pill. And this story needs more attention, basically, is what I'm saying. And full disclosure, Gerald Posner is a friend of mine. We have been good friends for 33 or 34 years. And so I need to tell you that I have great respect for him, but I also like the guy because we are friends. And I tell everyone that he's my friend, but I don't know if it's reciprocal. Gerald, do you tell other people that you're actually my friend? By the way, welcome, sir. But do you tell them that?
I do, as a matter of fact. I figure it's always going to come in handy, not only because you do a lot of great things, but at some point I might need somebody to blame a story on. I'm going to say, look at that Opelka. He's the one I got that from.
Excellent.
But that hasn't happened yet.
Excellent.
I know we trade good stories all the time.
Yeah, and yesterday, or actually it was 2 days ago, I'm reading your Substack post about the Jihad Pill. And Gerald, it's jaw-dropping. It sounds like an episode of, I'm going to make an old TV reference here, The X-Files, where there were reports of the military creating drugs that would make super soldiers out of any normal person. And yet this is where we are in this story of a drug. Let me get it right. Is it called Captagon?
Yeah, exactly. And Mike, it's so fascinating is that it was a small little footnote by the Jerusalem Post that said, by the way, Israelis, who have been collecting and putting the bodies of the Hamas terrorists who were killed in Israel on that October 7th day have found Captagon in their pocket. And that didn't mean anything to most people, but, for those of us who have followed Islamic terrorism for years or the drug industry, it's the perfect merger because Captagon turns out to be it is called the Jihad Pill sometimes, or cocaine for the poor, sort of a powerful stimulant that's like a methamphetamine, but it's been around for years, often in the Middle East, manufactured there illegally, bringing in billions of dollars of income to countries like Syria, more than all their legal exports. And here it is being used by the terrorists from Hamas on that day to give them a little bit more courage, to pump them up, to hype them up, so they can sort of kill without caring, as one person says. And boy, that's what Captagon does.
Well, the interesting thing about your story, and especially mentioning that kill without caring aspect of the side effect of this drug, Trey Yingst from Fox News has been doing incredible work reporting on the terror attacks and the war. He mentioned some of the atrocities and how you just can't imagine a human being doing what these people did to the children, the women, the families, all of that, as if they didn't have any moral compass at all. And if that's a side effect of the drug, then that points directly to these reports of finding it in the pockets of some of these terrorists.
And this is a drug. It's not just the first time that we've seen it. Those of us who have followed terrorism for years have seen it on terrorists. I mean, the gunmen and the suicide bombers who massacred 100 people in Paris back in 2015 at the Bataclan Theater, they had Captagon. Many of the suicide bombers who used to blow up weddings, restaurants, everything else inside of Israel and other spots in the Middle East, often found with Captagon or counterfeit copies of this type of stimulant. And I think the thing is, you cannot, if you took a Captagon, or if I did, or somebody who was a normal person, we're not suddenly going to become homicidal monsters and go out and want to kill, rape, and behead babies and rape women and burn families alive. So what it is you have to have that underlying already. You've been fed all of the craziness and the homicidal tendencies of a terrorist organization. You've now become somebody committed to it. You're ready to do it. You might have some natural fear or hesitation, and the drug gets you over that last little bit of hesitation and allows you to do it sort of and relish it and do it with gusto. And that's the part where the stimulant is so dangerous.
Well, it seems like it's beyond dangerous. Now, this was legal in some form back in the 60s?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it was actually the name Captagon is a trade name. It's a trademark name from a German chemical company that put it out in 1961, and it was to treat attention, sort of hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and also narcolepsy disease, like when you can't stay awake, you keep falling asleep. So it's related to speed, to regular amphetamines. But over 20 years, there was a big problem with abuse and diversion and addictiveness. And finally, the U.S. government said in 1981, 20 years after it was released, okay, we're banning it. They put it on the controlled substance #1 list, together with the worst of the possible drugs, and said it's illegal in the United States. And by 5 years later, it was outlawed in most countries around the planet because of its highly addictive quality. And that's when the syndicates came in. Originally like Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, and others, and then it moves into the Middle East where these labs are set up, and they make it very, very cheaply. It hasn't been trafficked heavily in Northern Europe or Western Europe. It hasn't been trafficked in the U.S. It's a drug that has stayed mostly in Southern Europe, in Greece, in Italy, in parts of Spain and Portugal, but mainly in the Middle East. So much so, Mike, that some countries have their own counterfeit version. So in Saudi Arabia, they have this version that has like 2 crescent moons on it, and the street value, they estimate that the Saudis eat up 600 million pills a year still. So it's a real drug problem on the street, in the Arab street, but also it's the fuel for terror organizations. And ISIS was the one who moved into it, because when ISIS was growing and expanding the caliphate, they took over a Captagon manufacturing plant in Syria, believe it or not. And they said, hey, great. And that's when they started to move it. And if anybody remembers this, in like 2020, Italian authorities broke up the biggest amphetamine seizure in drug history, 14 tons on container ships in Salerno. It was all ISIS manufactured Captagon that had been seized, over $1 billion worth of the drug.
Well, we're talking with Gerald Posner, author and friend of mine, and a guy who's written an incredible piece on his Substack. You need to go to Just the Facts and read this story about the Jihad Bill. Gerald, if we're aware of these plants where all of this manufacturing of this horrific drug is going on, is there a chance or a speculation we might see some surgical strikes to take out these, or are they secondary targets in the middle of this war?
They would definitely be secondary targets, but it would be fantastic to think that we were capable of doing that. Because, Mike, one of the things that I know from my work on the fentanyl epidemic is that the DEA believes that they have isolated 4 manufacturing plants in Mexico that are big, that produce over half of the fentanyl that comes into the U.S., just 4 massive manufacturing plants. It would be great to think we could send in cruise missiles to take those out. We're clearly not going to do that because Mexico would be ballistic and wanting to go to war with us. But we could eliminate half the fentanyl trade with strategic hits on 4 big plants in Mexico. So if we could do that to the Captagon plants, it would be fantastic. But you're right, it's going to be down the list of other priorities on this war.
One more question, Gerald, before I let you go. The article reads, It has a stunning fact in it that Bashar al-Assad has the control of the Captagon manufacturing in his country, in Syria, and that it's bigger in terms of business than exports of any kind or total exports out of Syria?
Yeah, and you know what's fantastic about that is that's not, that's reported by the mainstream, the legacy media. The New York Times actually had an investigation back in 2020 in which they named and showed that relatives of President Bashar al-Assad, all the key business people, the military people, the power structure inside of Syria involved in this trade. And the Times back in 2020 said they estimated the Captagon trade, the export from Syria. Syria was earning about $3.5 billion a year. Wow. They earn about $700 million from all the legal exports of everything they do in the country. So it's remarkable that it is a narco state. It's been that for several years, and yet you never really hear about it in the news. I mean, you hear about Syria being a failed state. Meanwhile, the people that control it are making just billions of dollars running this as a narco state. And where do we find the end result of their products? We find it in the pockets of the terrorists who are killing people in Paris and the pockets of the terrorists who are doing a slaughter in Israel. It's really a disgrace that they're able to get away with it with impunity.
We call it connecting the dots. It's journalism you're not seeing in a lot of places. And my friend Gerald Posner is right at the heart of it. I encourage you to follow Gerald. He's a great follow on social media, but just the facts on Substack is worth your time. My friend, thank you for this.
Mike, thank you so much. Thanks for talking about it.
And there he goes, and we have to take a break. It is 4:55 on a Monday. Mike Opelka is my name, sitting in for Vince Coglianese on the Vince Coglianese Show. And you're welcome anytime to join us at 888-630-9625. I talked earlier about Joseph Biden and how he had some uncomfortable moments at the Bidenomics event. And there was another clip that surfaced that I did not see that I think it's important for me to share it with you. At the end of the briefing that he was giving, Joe kind of cut away saying that he needed to get to the Situation Room. Now, unless that is now White House code for I have to go to the bathroom, which it might be. You never know. The guy's very elderly. And sometimes when nature's calling, you have to answer the call. But I think he really meant the Situation Room, especially considering what's going on today. But here's that short clip of how that abrupt ending came about.
I apologize. I have to go to the Situation Room with another issue to have to deal with. Thank you.
I apologize. And he's kind of whispering. It's kind of, I apologize. I have to go to the Situation Room with another issue. Thank you. And then he wandered off and somebody shouted that question about, hey, what about a ceasefire? And Joe fired back, yeah, we want all the hostages released first. And I was talking about the fact that really should have been statement number one last Thursday night. So I wonder if Joe Biden was called away suddenly because there is word that maybe Israel's getting ready to drop the hammer. And we would be connected to whatever's going on overseas. The Situation Room, by the way, the new Situation Room looks pretty cool. I had been in the old one, and that in itself was daunting to be in there and think of all of the history that went in there. But we remodeled a Situation Room, and that was around the time that the cocaine was found in the White House, too. I remember that, too. But maybe there is something happening this evening, so eyes and ears open right now. And, of course, if something does happen, we'll keep you posted. Right now, the biggest news was that there were 2 hostages released by Hamas. They happen to be Israelis, not Americans. So we're hopeful that all those hostages will get out, but I'm very concerned about it. The speaker battle. Who do you think should be the speaker? There are 9 people running. I have a pick. We'll talk about it. You're welcome to nominate your pick as well. It's Mike Opelka in for Vince Coglianese on the Vince Coglianese Show.